Mhm.
So live, Mr. Mayor?
We will now attempt to reconvene the regular council meeting of Monday, December 4th. Just bear with us. We're having some audio issues with regards to the recording, but we believe staff have found a workaround. So thank you, Carly and Cindy, for doing that. We'll reconvene the presentation. Donna, over to you.
Literally.
Wonderful, thank you. So I've had a chance to give you just a high-level overview of the franchise agreement renewal process, and I'll turn it over to my colleague Patrick, who will be able to walk you through in more detail what the municipal process entails and what is required of the municipality, and then subsequently the regulatory process requirements. And do we have Patrick? There he is, perfect.
I guess you can hear me now. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me yet?
Patrick, do you want to try to speak to us? We think we've fixed the audio, but give us a shot.
Can you hear me now?
We're getting, we just got to get your volume up, Patrick. So just bear with us.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Works for me. Can you guys hear him okay?
So can everyone hear me now?
We're going to try. Go for it, Patrick.
Okay. Well, if you can read what's on the slide, that's basically what we're going to walk through. If you can hear me okay. Basically, the process usually starts about a year in advance of renewal of the franchise agreements that Donna was talking to you about. And part of the package is we give you the history of what the existing franchise agreement says, and we ask you to put a resolution and bylaw in place to approve moving forward with a new franchise agreement. And in this particular instance, the terms and conditions of the existing franchise agreement will be exactly the same as those in the next franchise agreement that carries forward for the next 20 years. So the process, and municipalities have different ways to approach it, but many of them do first and second readings and do a third and final reading after the Ontario Energy Board has approved it. But some municipalities put all the readings at the same time. So once the resolution and draft bylaw are approved by the municipality, we send it on to the Ontario Energy Board, and they conduct a hearing, as Donna may have already mentioned. And once that proposed franchise agreement is approved by the Ontario Energy Board, we send the decision back to the municipality and ask that you put the bylaw through final reading. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so that's the regulatory process where we send an application to the Ontario Energy Board to explain what the process has been to date with the municipality, including today's meeting. And the Ontario Energy Board will put a notice in a local newspaper identifying that an application has been made. And there are two orders that we're requesting from the Ontario Energy Board. One is to approve the proposed franchise agreement, and the second is to waive the assent of the municipal electors in the municipality to approve the bylaw related to the franchise agreement. And as I mentioned, once the OEB issues a decision on the application, we'll provide it to the municipality. You update the draft bylaw with the date of the OEB's decision and order, and put the bylaw through final reading and execute the franchise agreement. Those instructions will be provided to you in writing once we get a decision from the Ontario Energy Board. So after you execute the franchise agreement, you provide us with signed and sealed copies of the bylaws as well as the franchise agreements. And then Enbridge Gas executes the franchise agreement and provides a copy to you as well as the Ontario Energy Board. I'm going to go to the next slide. Oh, that's it. Ready for questions if there are any.
Thank you much to you both, and thank you both for bearing with us through the technical issues. I'll look to council then for questions with regards to delegation. We do have a report from staff with regards to the renewal arrangement later on in the agenda as well. But while we have both individuals here, they can answer, both Donna and Patrick, but mostly Patrick can answer some of those technical questions. Questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor
Huntley. Through you, Chair, to Patrick, or whoever wants to answer it, I guess, is that you mentioned that you have like 300 agreements in place, but there's like 440 plus municipalities. So is there the other municipalities just not have natural gas? And the other part was you said you want to get it passed, or you want to get it through without amendments. You know, like what sort of things would show up in amendments in other municipalities?
Well, as far as the number of municipalities served, that's right. There's just over 100 municipalities, and 444 is the number of upper tier as well as single and lower tier municipalities. So we have franchise agreements in place with approximately 340 of the 444, and the remaining, there is no gas distribution service in those municipalities, and we don't have transmission pipe going through those municipalities either. Now we do have facilities in unincorporated areas as well, but those wouldn't show up under the 444 municipalities listed.
And the amendment question?
Sorry, what was the amendments?
Through you, Chair. The other part of it is part of what you said was you wanted to get passed without amendments. So my question is, what sort of amendments do show up in some of these municipalities?
Well, right now, we don't have any franchise agreements with any amendments to the model franchise agreement other than with the city of Kitchener. And Kitchener is unique in that Kitchener Utilities serves part of the municipality and Enbridge Gas serves the other part. And Enbridge Gas and its predecessors started serving parts of the municipalities southwest of the river because Kitchener Utilities couldn't reach that area. So that started in the late 50s, early 60s. And that area has expanded and we've continued to serve that area. So the franchise agreement happens to say we are only entitled to serve the description of the area that we currently serve.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
We also say no amendments because often when we do come up for renewal with the municipality will go through it and say, oh, can we change this language or this clause or whatnot? And it's really not within our scope to be able to do that because it is a model set agreement dictated by the OEB. And it was put in place in 2000 upon consultation with municipalities across Ontario. So it would have to go through a completely alternative process with the OEB for sort of any amendment to be made. Oftentimes, this is an opportunity for us to speak to municipalities and say, if there are any identified operations issues or any expansion issues or anything like that in terms of our services, that we can then say, okay, that's definitely a conversation or something that we can attain to or address issues in addition to sort of the standardized model franchise agreement renewal.
Through the chair, just curious, how much of that supply for that vast network that you have in Ontario for piping the gas is actually generated or comes out of the ground here in Ontario? And is that why Kitchener is somewhat unique?
I can answer part of that question. Kitchener is unique just because of the physical layout and the river dividing the municipality. That's the only reason. It was too expensive for Kitchener Utilities back in the day to try to serve that part of the municipality. So that's the only reason that there is a slight variation there for the franchise agreement. It was just a physical restriction. As far as how much gas in our system is locally produced, I don't know. I think the vast majority of gas would be coming right now from outside of Ontario, but I don't have percentages right now.
Thank you. Yes, just to build on Patrick's point, a large percentage comes into Ontario through the Trans-Canada Pipeline, but if you wish so, I could follow up and get more in-depth information about what we generate in Ontario.
Seeing no other questions, we are just voting to receive the delegation or the presentation rather from Enbridge today, and look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Byrne, all in favor? That is approved. Thanks for bearing with us, both Patrick and Donna, and thank you for coming, and appreciate the service in the community. Thank you. Moving on, thank you, Patrick. Our next presentation is Mark Mecherovsky, and he is the CAO for Kawartha Conservation with regards to the budget and the MOU. Mark, I'll let Cindy bring you the mic, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My pleasure to be here. I'd like to recognize as well Deputy Mayor Huntley and members of council. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present our preliminary 2024 budget and memorandum of understanding. And before I get too far as well, I'd like to recognize your appointed member to our board, which is Councillor Byrne, my director Byrne. And our board is a very, I would say, a very functional, strong board. And Jerry Byrne is a big piece of that. He's got a good head on his shoulders and asked some very insightful questions. So thank you very much for his appointment. Thank you. You're great. So the next slide I have for you is our budget process. As I mentioned, we are in the preliminary stage. We issued a first draft of our budget to the board, which was supported, like I said, a couple of weeks ago at our November board meeting. We anticipate some further discussions as we move forward in the budget process, which will result in a second draft going to the board in January. And all things going well, we'll circulate to our member municipalities for comment. It's a 30-day period, and that will be at the very end of January. And that will result in ideally a budget vote in March for support of that budget. And then at that point in time, we'll have our budget approved. Next slide, please. We have been operating with board direction. Our board direction is 2.5% increase in municipal levy. That works out to just under $43,000, as you see there. We are supplied an apportionment agreement from the province, and that's through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Their apportionment changes indicate that Cavan-Monaghan has actually the greatest apportionment change of all municipalities that we have in our participating municipalities. So that results in a slightly higher apportionment value of 2.79% when things shake out, and that's an increase of about $185. And that encompasses the municipal levy component, which is category 1 and 3 type programs, which I'll describe a little bit later as we go through the presentation. So on the next slide, I have identified that there is a big change in our budgets this year, and that really is tied into the Conservation Authorities Act and some of the changes that have occurred. One of the big purpose of the Conservation Authorities Act is the organization and delivery of programs and services that further the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources in Ontario and the watersheds in Ontario that are serviced by conservation authorities. So we are one of 36 CAs. You'll be familiar with at least a couple other of us. There'll be Otonabee Conservation and Ganaraska Region Conservation, perhaps Quinte. So there's a number of us that are out there, and we're all following the same changes. The objects of the CA Act are really what have changed a fair bit compared to where they were placed originally in the Conservation Authorities Act, but they identify categories 1, 2, and 3 type programs. And as you see there's a description of what those are. Category 1s are mandatory programs. Those are defined by the province. A lot of it is flood forecasting type activity or things that help on the natural hazard profile. There are a few water monitoring programs in there as well. Category 2s are those programs or services that are done on behalf of municipalities. They could be service agreements or special projects. And category 3 is other programs and services. Those are generally defined as things determined by our board to be advisable to carry out what I just mentioned about the CA Act purpose. So doing the good work that we do that isn't covered off by the other program areas. The key thing too is that the budget is supported by other revenue sources, which is key. I want to do a lot of good work and leverage that to the greatest extent possible. We do that through program generated revenues, grants and donations, or in some cases, some programs might be funded through reserves or deferred funds. The next slide shows you a little bit of a graphic of how things have changed in the legislation. This is my attempt at a graphic, so my apologies in terms of its rough nature, but PowerPoint provides some nice tools at least to conceptualize some things. So the operating levy has moved into 3 different component elements. Those would be business-focused program areas and activities. Those are hard to find in the Act, but those are termed general. And those are really supporting things that all businesses have to have, information management, technology, administration, finance, accounting, those sorts of things. The category 1s are the mandatory, and category 3s are those other programs and services defined by the board to be advisable. And then the projects and service agreements, which we would normally list out by each individual program, are lumped as category 2 type programs. So those are done to your benefit as a municipality. The next slide I have for you just identifies some of our general budget pressures. So I've already talked about a lot of the CA Act changes. We've actually redeveloped our entire budget in order to do that. That includes formulas as well as descriptions in order to meet the compliance. There's also, I think, something that everyone is always wrestling with every year, which is inflation and economy, and any grants that might be available to help support programs. Those really form the major impacts on our budget. The next slide I have for you is a look at your individual municipality and how all of this shakes out. So you can see that year over year, the increase is $185. That's the impact of our budget on you. You'll see that we have no category 2 projects with you specifically at this time. The next slide is looking at general benefiting proposed projects. So these are ones that are determined by our board to be important to carry out. And there's 2 projects that we have in here. One is digitization of records. And the digitization of records, we're really focusing on our corporate services records as well as planning and permitting. And so we've been putting a lot of focus on those. And the second is the environmental monitoring strategy. We're in the 2nd year of its implementation. And that's really looking at trying to make sure that the information that we have, a lot of this is category 1 front loaded, I would call it. And that's making sure that our information is accessible when we need it. So for instance, our monitoring programs, some of them are manual uploads, which means that you really don't have access to them in a flooding emergency. So we're trying to upgrade those all to real time, for instance. This year, there's 2 wells that are being upgraded, and that would be the Pontypool well and a well in Dermy's Cross Forest, and those are fairly close to your border here as well. And your share of that is $154. The next slide is subtly transition into MOUs. And so what we have here is both our revised budget and MOUs really stem from Bill 108 and the supporting regulations that detail a lot of the work to ensure compliance on those ends. So the gist of all of this on the next slide is really that the MOUs have to address a couple of different factors. The specific one that's really identified in the regulation is category 3s have to be defined by December 31st. The category 3s are those other programs advisable to undertake by the board. And they comprise about 5% of our budget. So they're relatively small, a small amount overall. The category 2s, which are the programs and services done on behalf of municipalities, those are also requiring MOUs. There's no set time frame for those specifically. But that is really the gist of the regs, covering off those 2 program aspects. The others are mandatory programs and therefore don't require agreements. So the next slide I have for you is really looking at, well, what is a category 3 program? So the category 3 programs, you can see here, there's a couple of examples of a couple of festivals that we have and some work with our local youth. And on the next slide as well, you'll see that that theme generally continues. So a lot of the category 3s that we have are really programs that connect with our communities and provide meaning in their lives and build their interest in the environment. They really consist of things like special events, education, our education program, as well as working with academia at the higher levels, and reporting on information that we collect. The next slide identifies our approach to MOUs, and just like to thank your CAO. She's been wonderful to work with. So I just wanted to throw that in there. She's excellent. And the MOUs really are trying to provide clarity on all aspects. So we recognize that probably not everyone's going to run back to the regulations in order to figure out what those programs are. So we put some breadcrumbs in the agreement in order to clarify what those services and programs are. And we've also used the annual budgeting process to provide direction on the apportionments. The budgets themselves follow a fairly highly regulated process, so it makes sense to use that as a mechanism. And there is clarity as well in terms of the different programs and the different category 2 type MOUs that might be present in the MOUs. The next slide details the different specifics around some of the legislative requirements. Those specific legislative requirements are identified with the asterisks. And you see the additions that we've had in the MOU is clarity around the different categories overall and on the using the budgetary process to identify the budgetary amounts. A couple of interesting pieces that we built in this too is we've looked at a 4-year cycle. So that means that every term of council will be able to look at this agreement. The term could be up to 5, but of course it misses 1 term of council. So we thought that was important to incorporate in this, and the schedules will be looked at every single year. So there's always an opportunity to review the agreement every year as well, which is a good business practice. So with that, on the next slide, I'll shift off into some of the highlights that we've had this year. Not a complete set of highlights, but we thought some of these might be interesting for you. We have, of course, a lot of work that we've done on the administrative side. I've talked about the MOUs and budgets, but there's a lot of other pieces that we've done to ensure compliance, with a few coming up this year as well. To finish that off. And we've had our first asset management plan completed. If you haven't seen it yet, you'll see it fairly soon. And we're pretty proud about that, but recognize there's a finance end that's attached to that as well. And we've had a pay equity and compensation review as well that we've initiated this year. And my thanks as well to your staff again for supporting that and acting as a comparator. On the community connectedness, this is something that ties to our strategic plan. I'm sure it ties to yours as well. And that is recognizing the value of our community. And so one thing that we do is we've held a couple of events. They're fairly popular. Normally for lots of events, you end up with fairly small numbers, I would say under 50 or so. that take part in a lot of our different things that are on, but there's a couple that resonate really well, and that's our fall festival. It's in its second year. This year we had 700 people show up. Which is great, and we just had our Christmas at Ken Reed as well this past weekend, and so we had 2,500 people roughly show up for that. So, and I'm happy to say that the very first person that I asked where they're from, they said just outside Peterborough. So that could have been in your jurisdiction, or maybe just one of the other municipalities around. But it does have a great draw from both the local area and even farther. So. The next slide I have is a slide of our permitting performance. So we have what's called CALC guidelines, or short form for that is CALC, of course. Long form is Conservation Authorities Liaison Committee, which in itself doesn't really mean anything either, other than it's a set of standards that have been agreed upon by the industry, development industry, province, and CAs. And we still call it CALC, even though we've bettered it by a third, the response time frame. So this represents that response on that bettering time frame. You can see it's not as great. We had some resource challenges this year, and that was during our busy season. But we're seeing those numbers. You can see creep up at the end there, and it doesn't include November, but we're at 90% on our November stats. Next slide is dealing with some improvements that we have in our precipitation patterns. And we do know that precipitation is changing over time. We also know that our existing monitoring station using the fancy gauges does cost a fair bit to implement. So we are looking at citizen science to fill that gap, and we find that's fairly effective. So people go out to their front or back lawn and measure precipitation. We have a few people that are interested in doing this in the winter too, brave souls. So they are looking at monitoring snowpack over the course of the winter as well, every day. And what that does is gives us a better idea of what's going on in the landscape. It gives us an idea of where we might need to locate new gauges. And importantly, it just gives us better coverage overall for our watershed, so we can do better flood forecasting. The other thing that we've done is a watershed report card in 2023. This is a 36CA collaborative where information is gathered over time. And so this represents 5 years worth of analysis in these watershed report cards, and is compared against the previous 5 years of monitoring results. So you can start getting into trending and see what the general kind of landscape health is for the area. On the next slide, this is really a lot of work that your neighboring municipality is doing on sediment and erosion control, but we thought it might be interesting for you. So they're doing a lot of work to look at different rain events and how much water is running off from the land and how much of that contains things like sediment, for instance. So sediment is a particular interest because phosphorus binds fairly tightly to soil, and so the more soil you end up in your runoff events, it means that the more weeds you get. Or if you want to be super environmentally friendly, aquatic plant growth, that's extremely abundant. So, so we try and take a look at what's happening in those areas, and that helps us inform different things. You can see someone doing a site inspection as well. We have a certified sediment and erosion control inspector that's able to look at different sites and recommend improvements to how sediment is being managed on site. The little bunch of bottles in the bottom is an example of a rain event that was taken, and so you can see at the front end, which is on the left hand side, and on the back end is really the start and stop of that rain event, and in the middle you can see it's fairly what we call turbid, which means that you can't see through it. So that means there's a fair bit of sediment coming off this particular site, which means that we can follow up and recommend those improvements. And I'll mention as well, we have a sediment and erosion control webinar, not webinar, but a symposium that's going on December 7th. In case anyone was interested, you'd have to register fairly quick because it closes today. But we have a number of people that are going to be exposed a little bit more into some of the industry standards that are being developed. So we have a number of speakers there, a couple of suppliers, and there should be some really good information that's brought forward. I do have a couple of examples of what will be put in there. Some of them are seating, hydraulically applied media, turbidity, silk curtains, how to use those, filter socks, and drone use for construction sites as a couple of examples of the topics being talked about. And the last content slide I have for you is we do collect a fair bit of information. So we do want the information to make its way out of our office. And so we are trying to share that in a number of meaningful ways. This is 2 examples of a dashboard. The top one is on precipitation, so it links into our long-term monitoring stations and presents that information in a way that you can play around with that data a little bit as well. And for instance, see how many days there were high precipitation days in either the entire length of that station or per year or whatever date range that you want. We're looking at, the bottom one as well is looking at a very specific project. It's it's called the Lake Dalrymple Management Plan. So we're analyzing a whole bunch of information on that will be rolled up into a watershed plan. But this allows everyone in that community or broader to actually look at that information and get some value added information from that. So we are looking at expanding that into several other dashboards, which we'll look at forward to releasing in the near future. A couple examples would be climate change and biomonitoring, for instance. So with that, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity afforded to make a difference in the community. And it really is the collective efforts of my team, of your staff and your municipalities, our community and stakeholders. So I don't want to take full credit for everything, but I believe we do some great work and happy to showcase some of that for you today. Be happy to address any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the kind words. And I know staff have enjoyed working with you to get further along with the MOUs. One question I had is with regards to some of the dashboard information. I'm assuming through the conservation website, the public can access some of that information, and it's readily available to manipulate for whatever subject matter might be of interest with whatever data is available there. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. We are looking at implementing either an open data platform or something at least similar that gets data out. So these are platforms that package information together and analyze it in a certain way. Some are more open than others in terms of being able to access the data, and others present the information where you don't want to see all the details. And so those were 2 examples. I think we have 3 or 4 different platforms we're looking at. I think there's different, they achieve different purposes, all of them. So we're using business or Power BI, which is a Microsoft platform, and a GIS, online GIS platform as well. So the StoryMap, which is the GIS version, has great capabilities to GIS and allows you to tell a story, but you can't play with anything. No data, but you can see some very interesting graphical changes. And the others let you actually play with the data a little bit more. So the R version, which was Lake Dalrymple, lets you actually play around with the details. You see individual records. So. Yeah.
Other questions for Councilor
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation, by the way. I'm just curious, was the disc golf course that you guys opened, was that an initiative that was done by the conservation? Was this done something independently, like people in your community that came to you to bring this in, or how did all of that come about? Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor. That was an interesting initiative. One of the things that we have as a standing kind of platform is we want to make sure that people enjoy nature that's meaningful in ways to them. So sometimes that means that, for instance, with Christmas at Ken Reid, it's a family event. People love families and want to provide opportunities for their kids. In other cases, we have a dog park, for instance, which is really helpful for people that have dogs. They can get their exercise, spend a bit of time out in nature, and disc golf is similar to that in that we did have requests over time from a number of the community members. Hey, what about disc golf for us? So we think it'd be great. So we did. There's some programs that we look at that are not as feasible, and this one looked like it was. So we did implement that, and it. We did get some grant funding in order to support this, and we had a professional designer from the Muskokas that actually designed the course, and it just took off from there. So, so we just developed the overall site plan, all the project parameters, and then implemented, and it seems to get some great use.
That's great. If possible, do you think you could share with me some of the information or someone I can speak to in more detail about that, and then I can kind of take it from there? Because quite a few people, I myself used to play disc golf in Toronto, and it's a great sport. I don't foresee that it costs a lot of money to get something like that going, and the fact that you were able to apply for funding as well, really kind of like a great nature and family thing all in one. So if you could share something with that, I'd be happy to follow up after. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Other questions over the council?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. It was great, very informative. My other question for you is, you list the category 1 and category 3 together at about $6,800 on, I don't know which slide it was, but it was one of those slides. And I guess what portion of that is category 3 versus category?
Yes, so the vast majority of that is, and actually we're just going back to the slide there. You see that we combined them, and the reason why we combined them is because we're in that graphic. How far back do you want me to go? Do you want to just keep going? Okay. So you can see here that we've got category 1 and 3 together. And the primary reason for that is because we're in that draft budget process. So we're still fine tuning some of the specific categories and where exactly they end up. The category 1 is the vast majority of that. So I think we worked it out actually for the MOU staff report a little bit later, but $500 of the 7,000 is category 3s. So it's a relatively small amount on a $4.3 million budget. It's about $260,000. So it's a pretty small amount in the end, and it's supported through a number of grants as well as other revenue generation. One example is we have an education program. We do charge fees for the education in order to cover our costs. But we do have a partnership with At Last Sports School, and so that's a revenue generation on our side. But we still get the great benefit of dovetailing with their mission and getting some good environmental education out there for some folks.
Any other questions from the council? If not, thank you, Mark. Thank you for the presentation and all the hard work and information that's gone into it. We're just receiving the presentation today. Look for a mover, Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Hunley, all in favor. That is approved. There's another report coming forward with regards to the MOU and later on the agenda as well. So we'll have a conversation then. Thank you again, Mark.
Thank you very much.
With that, we move on to item 7.1, which is our first and only delegation today, Daniel Eckrall, and from Kawartha Downs with regards to the Kawartha Downs development update. Welcome, Daniel.
Good afternoon, Mayor Graham, Deputy Mayor Huntley, councillors, and everyone in attendance today. My name is Daniel Dirkland. I'm the General Manager at Kawartha Downs, and I'm joined here today with Christian Chan on behalf of the Planning Agency. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time today to be here and allow us to provide an update and overview of Kawartha Downs. It'll cover two main areas, both of which are intertwined. I will briefly go over Kawartha Downs as an entertainment facility, and Christian alongside me will dive into the residential subdivision and application and approval status. Next slide. So the success of Kawartha Downs entertainment facility and the subdivision is hinged upon mainly our license with the casino and events that keep Kawartha Downs alive. With Kawartha Downs, you cannot separate our casino events, harness racing away from the hotels, larger entertainment facilities and the redevelopment, which is in future plans. It is important to mention that Romson believes in Kawartha Downs to continue to operate the business of harness racing and casino in conjunction with Ontario Racing and Shorelines Management Group respectively. Secondly, we continue to invest in this facility in good faith because we believe that it will be able to get back to a full lease with the casino, which will allow us to be able to actually break even in the near future. The casino lease is set to expire next year, and we will need the council's full support to ensure that this license gets renewed with a full lease. Next slide. So to this date, Kawartha Downs has made an investment of roughly $4.4 million into the restoration and redevelopment at Kawartha Downs. As an entertainment facility, Kawartha Downs has been busy restoring, rejuvenating, and redeveloping the property. It's been host to over 25,000 attendees across our 2023 event program while creating countless jobs for the township of Kevin Monahan. Next slide. Additionally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of our community partners, many of which are here today, Cavan FC and Community Care, as well as Curve Lake First Nations Group. These organizations have been very supportive in our bingo initiative and rejuvenating Kawartha Downs. Secondly, whether it's in support of Curve Lake First Nations powwows, the Cavan FC potential soccer field, or Community Care's outreach programs and other community initiatives, Kawartha Downs has connected and certainly dedicated itself to forming a strong relationship with these groups, and we're looking to continue to do so. Next slide. So now to touch on the development and entertainment component, which is broken up into phases. These phases are part of a 3 to 5 year revitalization plan that was initiated in 2022. Phase 1, which is what has been completed up until so far, as you'll notice, a renovation and restoration of the main building, floor 1, a demolition derby pit, outdoor concert area, and a certain parking lot expansion. Our revitalization plan has not changed since the initial unveiling. We have taken the facility very far, but yes, we are looking to bring in entertainment partners to kind of help us get to that next stage. With that being said, I would like to now pass it over to Christian, who will give us a further update as where we are today in terms of the residential subdivision and further application and approval updates.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. My name is Christian Chan. I'm the planning consultant that has been retained by Ronsman Investment Corporation, the owners of the subject property. We can have the next slide, please. Just a brief site plan here, just to show you quickly of what is being proposed, both for the commercial side and the residential side, but I'll delve more into the details of what is exactly happening with the process right now in the application. Go ahead, the next slide, please. So right now, the residential component of the proposed development is proceeding through a Schedule C Class EA. The Schedule C Class EA is a self-directed EA process, which has 5 phases, of which now we're entering into the 2nd and 3rd phase. I'm advised by Clearford, Mr. John Levy, who is heading that up, that the notice of commencement has been sent to the ministry, notifying the ministry that the Class EA is underway. So the entertainment is proposed with on-site servicing, retaining the existing casino and meeting rooms, a new 200-room hotel, a multi-use convention center, a new outdoor sports field, new public washrooms. The current site has an existing ECA and treatment system. However, the current site does not have a water system. That's a subject, one of the big proponents of the Class EA. So go to the next slide, please. So as you may know, councillors and mayor, the MZO was issued on March 2022. There was a summary MZO issued on September 23rd, 2022, adding 2 additional commercial uses to the commercial entertainment portion of the site. So the MZOs permitted additional commercial entertainment uses on the Kawartha Downs site to facilitate the revitalization of the racetrack and casino, and added residential zoning for the lands north of the Kawartha Downs facility. So pursuant to the MZO, the following planning applications had been submitted to the Township and County in 2022. There was a series of 4 of them. So it was an official plan amendment for both the residentially and commercially zoned lands to amend the official plan to permit the additional uses. A plan of condominium that was filed for the proposed residential subdivision of 517 units. and a site plan approval for the proposed expansion of the casino and racetrack. So I'd just like to take this time also to thank staff. Been working very closely with Mr. Connolly on this. We've had regular conversations that have been very helpful in proceeding through this process. And just if you can go to the next slide, please. This is a brief slide. I don't want to read all 24 items, but these are the list of documents, plans, reports, and studies that have been submitted so far for all the planning applications. In fact, some of them were also prepared for the MZO, submitted to the ministry for review. We do have physical copies of all the reports here. There are electronic copies that I understand are available online on the township's website as well for the public to review. And of course, we provide another hard copy should the councillors in there wish to review them as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of agency consultation, a request to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks had been submitted for a consultation made in November 2021. There was correspondence with the ministry in mid-December 2021 for additional information on the project and development. There was a site meeting with the ministry in April 2022. So these are the provincial consultations that we've done. And then we've also received comments on the applications for the township on county in February 2nd, 2023, and also from consultants RVA and Stantec in March 2023. All the comments have been addressed, except for those pertaining to the Conservation Authority, the Otanabe River Conservation Authority, the MECP, and the comments that are related to the results of us requiring to do a Schedule C class environmental EA study. As I mentioned again, that is self-directed. So the ORCA comments compelled additional studies. So again, the latest grouping of the ORCA comments were received in February 2023. So several of these comments compelled additional studies to be made to support the proposed works. So this would include stormwater, treated sewage, effluent discharge, and drinking water supply. So a few new studies had to be completed by Cambium, another environmental consultant on the team. And some of these studies required a timeline of up to or longer than 1 year. And I'll get into those timelines in a bit further detail. With regards to the First Nations, 2 of the First Nations have expressed interest in compelled consultation regarding the development. So these ongoing consultations are to be finalized and accepted by the First Nations to advance through the ECA process under the Treaty Rights of Ontario. So of course, again, the big topic is the MECP requires the completion of a Schedule C class environmental assessment. So this Class EA effectively halts all the design activities and the objective of this Class EA is to determine through public consultation the preferred servicing options, which leads to the design in the ECA process. So we proposed an expedited ECA process to municipal staff in June 2023 to piggyback off of the master servicing study. The municipal consultant directed us to complete a full Schedule C EA. We could go to the next slide. Actually, this slide's fine, thank you. So in terms of the Schedule C environmental assessment timeline, this is going concurrently with the review of the Planning Act applications as an integrated approach according to the municipal class guidelines from the Municipal Engineers Association. So in October 2023, the EA scope has been confirmed. October to November 2023, the EA team is assembled, documentation prepared. We are presently in the early stages of a Schedule C Class EA process, which will ultimately define the preferred servicing options and lead to the completion of the detailed designs and engineering reports. So the final report will not be available until at least 2 public meetings have been held and the final consultant reports provided in the proposal, in support of the proposal. So again, the notice of commencement has been sent to the ministry by Clearford. So this is current as of a week ago. Late November, December 2023, the first consultations are slated to be held. In April 2024, the consultant fieldwork is expected to be completed and the ministry's consultation to be held. In May 2024, there will be a Second consultation, after the completion of the fieldwork. In June 2024, the consultant data analysis reporting is expected to be completed by both Clearford and Cambium. And arising out of those final reports and the preferred options from the environmental study report, in July 2024, it's expected to, if there are any revisions to the draft plan of condominium, they will be done at that time pursuant to the completion of the study. And then in July, August of 2024, it is scheduled that the resubmission of the planning application documents for municipal and First Nations review will be submitted for final comment and consideration. And on next slide, please. So just to summarize and to provide clarification, Kawartha Downs is on a 5-year restoration and rejuvenation plan. The residential subdivision is awaiting its approval of the environmental assessment, the Schedule C, which is to be completed in June 2024. And what's needed is an extension of the casino license, as Daniel has explained, and the final environmental assessment of the residential subdivision. And thank you, Mayor and Council members, if there's any questions.
Thank you both for the presentation. I'm sure there's a few questions and we appreciate coming forward. As you can see from the majority of the content, and there's a lot of planning process that goes on, but council's not involved until the final stages of those process. So as you can appreciate, we've asked for, with regards to the MZOs and all the attention that those processes are getting, we're just checking in with those proponents in our township to sort of see from a council perspective with all of the, small town gossip and, coffee shop talk. We just wanted to hear from the horse's mouth, to use that analogy directly. I guess one of my questions that I have before I go to the members of council is just a general curiosity with regards to the alluded to 5-year restoration and rejuvenation plan. That's really where I think a lot of our questions are, because we get asked them a lot. And I've heard of reference to the 5-year forecast. I'm sure there's some, as you mentioned, with the renewal of the license, I'm sure there's some interrelated parts along the way that might affect what's in year 5, or if there's a 6 and 7 year. And I understand that's how the planning process goes. But I think we're curious, and I'll use a very pointed example, with the initial and the existing mapping that shows the existence of soccer fields, for example. Well, the township's doing our own process to rejuvenate our Parks and Rec plan. So it would behoove us to know where in that 5-year plan those soccer fields might come to fruition, so that when we're planning for our own investment on the municipal standpoint, we can understand that, well, there's a potential that those are coming offline in the future, understanding that obviously there's lots of shells that can move or delays that can occur. And obviously interest rates are a big impediment for a lot of I'm sure the plan is tough. So I think for us, what we're looking for, if you're able to, or maybe not now, but in future, be as transparent as possible with what those increments might be and when we can expect them. Because for us, I know, there's a lot of going on and a lot of reinvestment, and obviously Kawartha Downs is a really significant element of our community for both, the community hub, the horse racing industry, but also from a fiscal picture as well. So we're very appreciative for that. We're just, I think we want to understand where we're at with regards to the redevelopment plan, because we would like to be as informed until we are usually left till the end when it comes to the final strokes of these planning processes. So any transparency, whether now or in the future, that can be shared in that 5-year plan, even if it changes, because I think council is aware, even though we've only been in this iteration of council for just over a year, things change and we can appreciate that. And we're not going to hold everyone to every letter of every plan that comes into place, because for those of us, or Ryan and I, who were on during the pandemic, a lot can change out of the blue clear sky. So maybe in future, if that's something that we can share more about respectively, I think that would help council rest at ease a lot more. Other questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I guess on that exact same line, thank you very much for the presentation. It's great to get brought up this week. I guess we talked about the 5-year plan, but I mean, for starters, are we at year 0 or year 1 in this 5-year plan today? Page.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. Yes, at this point, in terms of the planning process, I'd say we would be in the 2nd year. So if we had the MZO come through in 2021, and then the amendment actually in 2022, and the amendment coming through and also later in 2022. We put the planning applications in 2022. And here we are almost 2 years later, and we're in the middle of, well, at the starting of the Schedule C process. The planning application documents have been submitted, and they are in the system for about 2 years now. So again, everything is on hold. And the MCEA process with the Schedule C is slated to be completed in June 2024. Now, typically, the Schedule C process takes between 18 and 24 months from commencement. But since a lot of the work has already been done and front-loaded as part of the original planning applications in 2022, is that there's a lot of work that can be springboarded off of, in fact, going to shorten the Schedule C process to be less than the 18 to 24 months that is generally slated for, and to be completed in about, well, now it's going to be about 7 months' time. So it has been commenced. 2024, it's going to be done. And then there's going to be a final review on the planning applications in an integrated approach with the Schedule C study. And then we'll move forward towards final approval of the planning applications. Then, of course, there's the development has to occur, which will take, I don't want to speak on behalf of Rick, how long it will be able to be take, but I think once the planning approvals come through, should they come through, then we should be in good position to start preparing the site. And of course, as alluded, as spoken to by Daniel, is that there already has been some significant investment into the commercial entertainment portions of the site that's already being undertaken. And I think throughout, even as the residential subdivision continues to develop, is that there will be continued investment into the commercial entertainment complex to keep revitalizing that portion of the development.
We'll go to Councilor Nanchuk and then Councilor Burke.
Thank you very much. Thank you through you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation as well. Having had the opportunity to work there before, I'm familiar with the facilities. So I think it's wonderful that, the private sector is stepping up and investing in the community. So I'm excited to see where this goes. Just a kind of simple question, the extension of the casino license, how long is the term of the extension of the license? And do you foresee any obstacles for just a simple renewal, or I'm assuming it will probably just be a simple renewal? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor, through you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the extension of the casino license, it's slated to be up for renewal in 2024. With that being said, it typically is a roughly, I want to say, I don't want to misnumber, but it's usually a 3 to 4 year lease agreement. It's in the process of, I guess you can't really speak to the renewal updates until the term is up. So I don't believe those conversations have started just yet, but they're looking to start into 2024.
Through the chair, and I'm going to load this question up for you a little bit so we don't have to pass the mic around. On slide 9, items 8 and 9, and again later on you talk about. So I'm just curious what the difference is between an environmental analysis, an environmental study, and an environmental asset or assessment. Sorry. And the other thing part that I'm really curious about, because a lot of constituents that I've talked to, they mention the noise, and I just don't know how you're planning or perceiving to deal with local people that have been there a long time, if there's an impact on them for that noise issue with some of the stuff moving forward, please.
So the municipal class environmental assessment is for larger scale projects that require ministerial review when a development, in this particular instance for private development, is requiring new servicing coming to it. For example, wastewater servicing, and also water servicing. So because in this instance that the proposed development for the residential subdivision is beyond the municipal boundary, or sorry, the built boundary of the township, therefore it wasn't covered under the master servicing study by RVA, and therefore the private side, my client had to move forward with doing the Schedule C municipal class environmental assessment. So in this case, it comes under ministerial review. It's a more comprehensive environmental study than what is provided individually in each of the reports that would have been previously provided to Township Council and the county for review. So in the municipal class EA process, what is being looked at is a 5-phase approach. And part of one of the phases is that there has to be studies of alternative solutions. So in an instance where it's just a regular planning application, a environmental impact study gets submitted, environmental servicing reports, but in the instance of a municipal class EA, is that all options have to be studied and the preferred option has to be selected through public consultation, which includes the county, which includes the township, which includes also those affected by noise. For example, they can attend these public consultations. And then the preferred option is discussed and decided because all the options have to be explored through a municipal class environmental assessment versus a planning application where we come in with our preferred option and then the township and county will review it as to whether it would be appropriate. In this instance, it has to be a holistic approach.
Other questions from the council?
Through you, Chair, and not to get too far down in the planning act on this one, but I'm curious what the expression, all options explored, like who determines what's all options? Like, I'm sure there's got to be like an infinite number of options, but how do you narrow it down to all? I'm not talking about your project specifically in this case. I'm just curious if that phrase all options.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, all options, I'm saying it's every single option, all encompassing, but it is determined by the engineers that are retained to lead the EA effort. All the preferred options are explored and discussed with the township and county in order to best proceed with the preferred option for the proposed servicing for the development. Again, this is determined and has a big influence from the public consultation component of the the EA Class C process as well.
I guess that really stresses the importance of the public involvement. When you do have these public meetings, that the public really should get out there and put their opinions out there so that they can become part of the options. Thank you for clarifying.
The Class C EA process also requires a minimum of 2 public consultations, and that's a minimum. And of course, once I discuss it with Clearford in further detail in terms of the public consultation strategy and scheduling, I'll be sure to share that with staff and the council.
Through the chair, just on that note, what could I tell the public to be ready with when they come to those meetings to maybe put forward something that may be something on the engineering side of things haven't looked at or haven't thought about? Is there a process there that they could be more prepared for? Is there some way I can get follow-up before that, please?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair. I will make sure to coordinate that.
Thank you, sir. I'll be sure to coordinate that with Clearford and to get ahead of the public consultations to make sure that the public is well informed and well prepared for the meeting as well. So they're not caught behind schedule or show up without, information that they would add value to the public consultation process as well.
And to Councillor Burns' point as well, I think it's also helpful because of the level of interest and for the sake of transparency, any of the presentation materials that would be presented at that public consultation, not everyone is capable of getting to the whole sites on those specific dates with families for other personal matters. So if any of those documentation materials or presentation materials could be accessible for free attendance, so public can review and come informed to provide, that would be also very helpful as well. If we try to incorporate that with municipal public meetings as well. So just a thought. Other questions, members of council, before I move on? Councillor Natchoff. I'm going to try to save you the walks.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Maybe just a kind of easier solution, Mr. Councilor Byrne, and facilitate it on your behalf. Maybe it might be like behooving for your company to reach out to the like immediate residents within like a 2-kilometer radius, 3-kilometer radius around that area. Introduce yourself, introduce whomever the community liaison person is on behalf of your company, and allow them so that they would have a telephone and email dialogue so that they could present to you what issues that they may foresee. So just so that you're well aware of things ahead of time, and that they feel that they not only have to come to council, but can go directly to you, so that, you know, the right hand and the left hand are speaking with one another. I think that would kind of be the most effective way that you guys can kind of work with the community directly, so that those immediate people can be recognized. Thank you.
Yes, Council, that's a great comment. I believe Kawartha Downs has done as you saw with our, or you may not have seen with our summer events, we coordinated with those in the community to understand that these events are quite large in scale, that they're more than welcome to come, and we know we wanted to make these events community welcomed. And second to that, we do have a public information session slated for the near future, which was posted online at our site and elsewhere as well. So we're definitely open to suggestions and recommendations on how to further work with the community.
Excellent. Thank you for all those questions, council, and for the answers, gentlemen. We are just receiving the delegation for information, so I can look for a mover for that. Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Byrne, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you both for coming today and for providing that update. I'm sure there's many people that will be at least tuning in for this portion of the meeting to hear that update. So thank you both for attending. We appreciate it. Before we move on to the agenda, I'm just going to take just a 3-minute recess, just so we can catch our breath and let staff re-coordinate, so we finish the pass the mic meeting. So we'll take a brief recess for about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Pay lecture tonight.
Okay. We will now reconvene the regular council meeting. First item to deal with on the agenda next is the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 20th, 2023. Any questions with regards to the minutes? If not, we can take a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes as presented. Councillor Byrne, seconder, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? Those are approved. The next set of minutes is the Cappamonican Public Library Board meeting minutes of October 17th meeting be received for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. We have 3 reports, I believe, if I'm counting correctly, maybe a few more reports on the agenda. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the recommendations, so we're not throwing the mic back and forth across the room. And then if council has questions for either of the presenters, then I'm going to shift the mic over for that portion, okay? So first report is 10.1, report Public Works dedication parts 1 and 2, 45R-15457 as part of public road allowance for Carvest Drive. Drew is here to answer those questions, but the motion for the report is that council approves the dedication of parts 1 and 2, 45R-15457 as a part of public road allowance Carvest Drive, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute bylaw number 2023-79, being a bylaw to dedicate parts 1 and 2 on plan 45R-15457 as part of the public road allowance for Carvest Drive. That is the housekeeping amendment before us today with regards to Public Works. Does someone have questions for Drew? If not, we'll take a mover for those 2 motions. Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Thanks for your report, Drew. Thanks for filling in for Wayne. The next report is Corporate Services 2023-12 is the franchise agreement renewal with Enbridge Gas. And Cindy can speak to this, but the motion is that council approve the form of draft bylaw and franchise agreement and authorize the submission thereof to the Ontario Energy Board for the approval pursuant to the provisions of Section 9 of the Municipal Franchises Act, and the council requests that the Ontario Energy Board make an order declaring and directing that the assent of municipal electors to the draft bylaw and franchise agreement pertaining to the corporation of the Township of Cappamonican is not necessary pursuant to the provisions of Section 9, subsection 4 of the Municipal Franchises Act. Questions for Ms. Page with regards to that long recommendation? If not, we'll take a mover and a seconder for those recommendations as presented. Councillor Edgerton and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. The next report is 10.3, the Economic Development 2023-52 Community Improvement Plan Grant Program recipients. I understand there is 1 recipient from the expanded application, and it's iron equipment for the purpose of the 10,000. So that is the extent to which we're discussing that component today. But Ms. Ayad is here to answer any questions if we have them. So those recommendations in the report are that council support providing iron equipment $10,000 from the 2023 Community Improvement Plan, and that any unspent funds from the program's years 2019 through 2022 and 2023 Millbrook CIP programs be rolled over to the 2024 capital program, and the council open the 2024 CIP program to all the CIP areas, Millbrook, urban fringe and rural area, to include all available funding streams. Questions?
No.
Councillor Byrne has a question? Or you move it? Okay, Councillor Byrne, Bridget's coming to you.
Through the chair, so I'm not sure how to present because of back and forth motions, but I'm kind of curious how much is going to be left to be rolled over if this 10,000, which I don't have a problem with. The other thing we talked earlier, I was curious about how many employees of Ironworks actually reside in the township. And there was something else I was going to ask, but I can't think of it now, so I'll go with that for now.
I can answer some of those questions, I think. Just to save Cindy the trip. There was 25,000 allocated, so it's a rollover of the 15,000 from last year. And there is a residual amount of approximately 40-some thousand from previous years that's also going to be amalgamated into the one account for the CIP moving forward. We don't have or have access to legally any employment files with regards to identifiable individuals and their addresses, so we couldn't answer that question with regards to employees of iron equipment. Other questions, Councillor Byrne? Sorry.
Through the chair, so a follow-up to that would be, with this moving forward, it's going to be open to everybody again, but for a long period of time, this was basically just the boundaries of Millbrook and more essentially just the main street of Millbrook. I'm thinking this is the only year that you've actually extended it past those boundaries. And we haven't, I guess, got a lot of response back. I'm not sure if that's because there wasn't people that wouldn't like to make use of this, or they didn't know how to access it or get involved with it to get some. So I'm a little curious why maybe there isn't a second year. Why there isn't maybe a second year that is going to be restricted to be the outlying areas rather than being open to everything again, and from a perspective that maybe the people of Millbrook will get the lion's share again, is all my worry is.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Byrne, and through the chair to you. We absolutely can run the program again for the expanded area. I think a few years ago, I believe the intent behind the expansion was that council had kind of wanted to alternate years. I don't think it was carved in stone. It was just something that they thought they might do. As to why it wasn't fully subscribed this year, it's hard to tell. I think with this expanded area, you have a different type of business. So I think we talked about it internally. You know, maybe it's something that we take it personally. If we see somebody coming forward with a Planning Act application, you know, chances are there's a project that might go with it that they might be eligible. So that might be a way to kind of get a better uptake. We certainly advertised it the exact same way we did the Millbrook CIP. So, but absolutely at council's direction, we can open it to whomever you choose.
Through the chair, a follow-up. Was there anybody declined or turned down that submitted anything for this last year for the, okay, thank you.
Thank you for those questions and those answers, Ms. Ives. If no one has any other questions, I think the motions are there. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder for those two motions. Councillor Edgerton, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. The next report is report 10.4 CAO report regarding the Kawartha Conservation Cost Apportioning Agreement. And the motion is that council support the Kawartha Conservation Cost Apportioning Agreement for Category 3 Programs and Services, and that bylaw number 2023-80 be approved to authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign the cost apportionment agreement for the Category 3 service/programs between the Township of Kawamonagan and Kawartha Region Conservation Authority. So this is the document and report pertaining to the delegation that we received earlier. Any questions for any members of staff or our friend Mark, who has maintained his position here for with regards to this? If not, we'll take a mover for those two recommendations in the report. Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Council Verbal Committee Reports 10.5. Before I go, would anyone else, does anyone have one before I pass the mic down? Deputy Mayor Huntley, I'll come to you first.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to give a quick update on BIA. There's Christmas in the Village this Thursday, 5 to 9. Regular horse-drawn carriages and lots of fun to be had in the evening. As well with the BIA, they did submit their budget to Finance Committee. And they're looking for an extra $2,000 on the total levy next year. So there'll be a slight levy increase coming in for the BIA members. And other than that, I think that's all I got to report.
See back the clock.
Thank you. Any other verbal committee reports from members of council? With regards to the library board, we did meet a few weeks ago now, or a couple of weeks ago now. So there's a couple of numbers we talked about. Then I wanted to bring to council's agreement. They did receive, as they presented to us already, a significant grant for the Senior Stories program that they're collecting. So we were battering around a few different ideas as to how we could maybe expand or garner more interest. And I know there's going to be some outreach that the library is undertaking to try to cultivate more relationships to capture those stories while we still have the funding to do so.
We also received a comprehensive sort of IT, what I would call sort of an IT review from the county. So they identified a number of projects that we need to sort of come up with a master plan for to integrate and update the IT components of the library. And then they've also completed through our marketing subcommittee a rebranding or brand enhancement activity. So you'll see a more vibrant display of some of the library from their marketing and things like that to sort of rejuvenate the interest and marketing. What's the right word? Marketing appeal of a lot of the library programs. So look forward to that in the new year. And obviously we have a number of events going on. We have the Santa Claus Parade this weekend, in addition to Christmas in the Village. And we also have the Firefighter Award banquet later on that evening as well. So we'll look forward to seeing everyone at council and in the community there as well. No other verbal committee update, verbal reports. I'll look for a motion to receive those for information. Councillor Nanshoff and Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for motion. There is one item that's under correspondence for action, which is a resolution from municipality of Wawa, Bill C-310, volunteer firefighting search and rescue tax credit. I asked this to be brought forward. It was something that Deputy Mayor Huntley and I spoke to at the county. To summarize it, their Wawa put forward in their resolution support to lobby the federal government to increase the volunteer tax exemption on the wages from volunteer firefighters throughout the province to 10,000, up, which is currently the limit of 3,000. So that's the majority of the ask, to suggest that a lot of the volunteer firefighters actually don't recoup their costs from the wages that some of the services and some of the communities that they have to provide. So we're looking to pressure the feds to provide more of a tax insulation for their wages to make them, it's the least they can do is we continue to pay them for their volunteer service. But if the feds could help ensure that they actually get to take more of that money home, all the better. So if everyone doesn't mind, the motion for that correspondence for action is that council for the township of Cabmonaghan support the resolution from the municipality of Wawa regarding Bill C-310, volunteer firefighting search and rescue volunteer tax credit, and direct staff to complete the online petition of support, and also probably send a letter, a notice letter to our MP with regards to our support for this initiative. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Edgerton for a mover, Deputy Mayor for a seconder. All in favor? That is good. Thank you for that. Members of council, we now have the bylaws, so I will read them in their entirety. That bylaw number 2023-79 being a bylaw to dedicate as part of a public road allowance a portion of Carveth Drive described as part of Lot 10 in Concession 4, Geographic Township of Cavan being Part 2, Plan 45R-15457 being bylaw number 2023-80 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the cost apportionment agreement for the Category 3 service programs between the Township of Cabmonaghan and Kawartha Region Conservation Authority, and bylaw number 2023-81 being a bylaw authorizing the temporary borrowing of funds to offset the current expenditures of the Township of Cabmonaghan, and bylaw number 2023-82 to provide for the levy and collection of 2024 interim realty taxes and penalties for non-payment thereof, to be read a first, second, and third time and passed this 4th day of December, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. And that draft bylaw being a bylaw to authorize a franchise agreement between the corporation of the Township of Cabmonaghan and Enbridge Gas, be read a first and second time this 4th day of December, signed by the mayor and the clerk. Can I get a motion for those bylaws? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, the confirming bylaw is bylaw number 2023-83, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held December 4th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, passed this 4th day of December, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Nanshoff. All in favor? That is approved. Lastly, motion to adjourn. Councillor Nanshoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. I'm going to read a number of upcoming events that have already been mostly highlighted, but we'll hit more of the high notes. For those of you who are of interest, there is the special council budget meeting where staff presents formally the draft budget in its current form, and that is this Thursday at 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the council chambers. Santa Claus Parade, as we mentioned, is December 9th, but before that, Christmas in the Village, December 7th at 5 to, I believe, 9 p.m. Regular council meeting is Monday. The last meeting of this year is Monday, December 18th at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. The public library board meeting is Tuesday, December 19th, 7 p.m. at the Millbrook branch. The regular council meeting of the new year is January 15th, 2024 at 1 p.m. The Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting is Thursday, January 18th at 9 a.m.
And then we have a special council budget meeting Thursday, January twenty-fifth at 1 p.m., followed by another special council budget meeting Thursday, January twenty-fifth at 6 p.m. for the public. Look forward to seeing you at any and all of those events. And thanks everyone for enduring our technical issues, and thanks to staff for working so quickly to get them solved. Have a good afternoon, everyone.